Cronulla, we're hearing private member statements. I call the member for Rockdale.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'm rise to report to the House on the recent Premier's Anzac Youth Ambassadors trip to Greece and Israel, which I was fortunate to be a part of. It was an incredible privilege to join with some inspiring young people to commemorate our fallen Anzacs across some of the battlefields of the First and Second World Wars, in which Australian troops paid the ultimate sacrifice, including at the site of the Battle of 42nd Street in Crete and the Battle of Beersheba in Israel, as well as visiting many of the Commonwealth cemeteries where Australian soldiers are laid to rest. Mr Speaker, these 6 high school students from across our state wrote exceptional essays on what the centenary of Anzac and the Battle of Beersheba means to them, and earned scholarships from Clubs New South Wales to embark on this amazing trip. After spending the last 2 weeks with these astonishingly bright and passionate young men and women, I couldn't think of a better group of ambassadors to join the Australian delegation during these historic tributes. We began our journey in Athens, visiting the Phaleron Commonwealth War Grave Cemetery, the final resting place of 2,029 Commonwealth servicemen, including almost 600 Australians. We then travelled to Lemnos, where many of our Australian soldiers were stationed during the Gallipoli campaign, as well as the location of the Battle of 42nd Street on the island of Crete, where Australian forces won one of the few victories for Allied forces on Crete, and in part the heavy casualties they inflicted led to the German military abandoning airborne assaults. Next, we arrived in Israel for the official commemoration of the centenary of the Battle of Beersheba and the Charge of the Light Horse, an incredibly moving service which included a visit to the Commonwealth Cemetery. Mr Speaker, it was so incredibly moving to see one of the young essayists, Oliver Litchfield, visit the grave of his great-great-grandfather, a truly special opportunity to acknowledge the sacrifice his family gave to our nation. We were driven to tears as Oliver's fellow students embraced him during this wholly moving experience. In fact, we called it Operation Kuta. We had to find his great-grandpa. It was beautiful. At every location we visited, we stopped and the students laid a wreath on behalf of our country in memory of our fallen servicemen, and I couldn't be prouder of how they acquitted themselves. This was also a particularly special trip for me, as I had the opportunity, to visit the monastery of St George in Jerusalem, where my father passed away during a pilgrimage to the Holy Land 2 decades ago. Mr Speaker, while this trip was non-stop, I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to help escort these 6 bright young Australians and witness the deep respect and thoughtfulness with which they approached Australia's military history and the legacy of the Anzacs. I wish to acknowledge the young leaders who this trip was all about. Eva Leitonen, Vanni Sritharan, Hunter Leach, William Foster, Oliver Litchfield, better known as Kuta, and Rockdale's very own Eloise Cooper, all of whom have bright futures ahead of them. A special thanks must go to Clubs New South Wales and CEO Anthony Ball, who facilitated this delegation. I couldn't think of too many other CEOs who would personally take the time out to help act as a chaperone for such a packed trip. Mr Speaker, Anthony Ball is just a genuine good guy who sought to get the very best out of the students throughout the trip. He challenged them to express themselves and to build their confidence on a daily basis. I'm quite sure they actually came back as different people, and it was great to see. I also want to thank the fantastic Lenny Petanos, who fussed over these kids throughout the whole trip. She was a little bit of a pain on occasions, Mr Speaker, but she was absolutely fantastic, was on top of all of the photography requirements because I'm pretty hopeless and low tech.
What was your role?
And she joined me to accompany as I said, to accompany the students for the entire trip. It was also great to join Minister Dave Elliott, who was with us during the Israeli leg, and Speaker Shelley Hancock with the better half, Aussie, and Gareth Ward, who joined us on the Israeli leg of the trip also. Overall, Mr Speaker, the trip was a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and the fine young students we chaperoned made our nation proud. Thank you.
Well done.
I'd like to thank the member for